afternoon. Thank you for joining our session today. We are going to go over a journey that Tharseo IT, Oracle, and our customer, the Air Force Services, embarked on that began about 3 years ago. My name is Charlie Hopkins, and I'm the account manager at Tharseo. I had the unique pleasure of starting this journey with the Air Force customer as an Oracle rep to begin it, and then finally ending it when we went go live as a Tharseo rep. I'm the senior public account manager for Tharseo, and with me is Wes Mullins, who is our CTO, and he's going to go over some of the more mechanical pieces as we can tell you about the story here. If anyone's new to Oracle or working with Oracle, if you haven't seen this, been working with Oracle, you know exactly what that is, which is not expressing anything contractually. So I mentioned before we've been working with this customer, the Air Force. What the Air Force Services does is they manage all of the NAVI systems within the Air Force. And if you're not into how the federal government works too much, the NAVI organizations are non-appropriated funds, which means they get their money, they make their own money basically through the outreach and the programs that they support. They also have a combination of APF funds, which is appropriated funding, which comes from Congress, and that helps with their budget. So they manage a lot of systems, about 28 systems for the entire Air Force. Some of these systems are banking, various financials, health benefits, personnel records, and they're doing all of this on e-business. They run about $2 billion a year through their books. 1.3 of that is the non-appropriated stuff, and another 800,000 is the appropriated funding. In addition to all those e-business systems that I manage, they're also responsible for a lot of the MWR, or the morale programs for dining facilities, golf, the exchanges, things like that. They have about 800 employees that are managing these systems. And about 3 years ago, 2001, they were at a crossroads. They had to make a decision if they were going to go into the cloud or do a very large technical refresh for their hardware environment, all the servers, the storage, the networking. And we started working with them, helping them come up with a couple course of actions on the benefits of staying with an on-premise solution, which there weren't very many viable options for that, or moving into the cloud. It takes the federal government a little longer to start new initiatives, especially when they're mandated. They have to do a lot of review, risks, and so what we agreed to do with them was starting out with a proof of concept. We said, customer, this is going to be the work environments with the eBiz suites, database, and some of your other applications, and we'll demonstrate to you what the production environment is going to look like. And part of the benefits that we're talking about were performance, the ease of use, spinning up new environments, processor storage, networking. Some of the challenges that we discovered along this journey was there was a lot of concern within the organization. There were organizational concerns, there were cultural concerns about letting go of their servers. This cloud thing was a new frontier to them. They didn't get it. The ones that did were on board, but it was really hard to let go of the way they've been doing business for the last 20 years. Right? So we helped them get there.
Keep the CTO. Keep looking.
So where were the data centers that they had?
They had 2 data centers down in Randolph Air Force Base in Lackland. And now those are going to start slowly being decommissioned, at least for the Air Force Services part of it. But that was a very good question, because one of the problems was they were failing over, or their disaster recovery was in a few miles of each other.
About 21 miles. Have you ever been to San Antonio, Randolph, and Kelly? 1410, you're there in about 20 minutes, right? Which is not really a good DR, maybe an HA plant. It's not really much of a DR plant.
And in their new world now, they're going to be running their production up in Phoenix, Arizona, at the U.S. Sky Data Center, and the failover will be over in Ashburn. So we talked about the issues. It was a textbook case of moving to the cloud. They had the mandates from big Air Force pushing them down to move to the cloud. They didn't know how they were going to do this, and we walked them through it with the pilots and the proof of concept. All right, so yeah, back in 21 when we started this project, I think I've already covered that pretty hard. The teaming with Oracle, partnership and support. So I was able to start this as a Tharseo, as an Oracle employee, and finish this up as a Tharseo employee. And it took 3 years for us to get here, but we got to learn a lot about each other. And the investment that Tharseo made really helped Oracle. It made Oracle confident in our ability to do this job. It helped the customer gain confidence in us, and it worked out. Let's skip some of this. One of the early parts of this program when we were starting, before the proof of concept, was we did something called a joint execution plan. And the joint execution plan really provides a direction for what the work's going to be done, what the outcome is going to be, and what the deliverables are going to be. And this is an exercise that we sit down with the customer to figure out what are your goals and objectives, and then we can tell them how do we think this pilot is going to align with those goals and objectives, and then we can adjust from there. So in the early days, we started out, they moved forward with getting a tenancy in OCI. We helped them provision and get the connectivity done, and there it was so good that we did this proof of concept because there were so many hidden issues with network connectivity. Right? We thought this was going to be just a quick VPN to set it up. Then we had to start getting fast connects. And then all of a sudden, big Air Force security is really interested in what are you guys doing down here? Who's monitoring this? If you're not familiar with the DoD 1015-16, that was the initiative from the DoD's office that gave us the guidance where you can have the exceptions when you need to use a VPN with fast connects and what that looks like. But we got those connections done. We had some unforeseen issues with the telecom vendor getting those connections done. They said it would take 30 days. It actually took about 9 months to get that done. Another big milestone was testing the disaster recovery, the failover. Like we talked about before, they were failing over basically the next zip code in the blast zone. But when we set up their environments, both their data centers up through Phoenix and Ashburn, and we started cutting off one of the pipe, and they could still get through to all of their data. It was all there, exactly like it was supposed to be. It was a non-event almost. However, on the reverse, when we cut the other side of the pipe and they tried to get back, it didn't work. And that was a learning moment right there. It's because there was a network administrator that didn't have the load balancer configured the right way. So it went one way, but it didn't go the other. So when we came and we were ready to go into production, we were like, aha, we got that, we understand, and there's going to be a potential failure here in the failover if we don't get that addressed right. That was a very big learning curve for this customer as well. And then the lessons learned. There were the networking, the security, working through the services organization to get all the sign-off was a lot of work. There's people, it seems, in the IA that are really good at saying no and not very good at saying yes. And when they say no, they're very good at not telling you why. It's go figure it out and come back. So Wes is going to come into some of the, in a minute, some of the more technical aspects of the deployment. But on Tuesday, after 3 years, we went live. And we stayed up, the engineers stayed up for literally 5 days with no sleep. But we had a commitment to the customer. Last week before the go live, we worked closely with Oracle and their customer support. We set up the SR tickets in advance. We had meetings with the people that were going to work on the SRs. We had direct cell numbers, emails, and at the end, we went through most of the weekend. We were doing okay. And then when we needed them, we were able to get the people on the phone and see if we could get some help. So after all of that, it was a very intense experience, but on Tuesday morning, we were all in San Antonio. We were going out there to meet with the customer, and it's like, did it work? I said, yeah, we've got 80 people logged in. And then we get on site and say, okay, we've got about 140 people logged in. We're like, this is weird. And we were starting to think about what's next, what other workloads. And the voice of reason stepped up and said, why don't we just let this thing run for a week and see what we got. So I'm going to turn this over to Wes.
Thank you, Charlie.
Appreciate it.
Charlie told me earlier, the only thing that's standing between you and the beer is me. So I'll try to make this a little more rapid, right? You kind of get the idea on the tech landscape, right? So this is an eBiz system. Here as eBiz, the whole back was going to raise their hand, right? Lots of folks in eBiz this week. So they're on 12.2.9. They have around 30,000 named users, between 600 to 1,000 concurrent users based on time. They operate globally. If you go to Kadena in Korea and you go to the bowling alley, right? If you go stay at the Air Force Inn, that's all through this system. All the billing is done back through this system. So some of the challenges that they experience from a tech perspective that presented the hardware refresh, right? They're still on Spark. They have storage capacity problems at their 2 data centers, right? There's no room to expand. And then one of the other things that they had a challenge with, they had about 14 pending projects. And on Solaris, they had 3 environments. How would you possibly do 14 projects in 3 environments, right? It's a perfect answer for cloud. Easy enough. But how did they do it? So at Darceo, how we deliver swiftly is how we deliver our way. Strategize, work, implement, finalize, transition, right? I like to think of us as the wild and hotshot firefighters, right? You got a problem, you call us, we come in, we fix it, we're right back to you. So I'm not going to make you read the eye chart there, but it will be in the session deck if you want to go through the methodology in more detail. One of the things that they had tried before to do a hardware upgrade, they had, with an unnamed CSPE, had about a 3-year engagement. They spent about $490,000 and had 0 shipment at the end of it. Nothing. They knew it didn't work. But how does it work? So the key thing, Oracle Cloud, excellent technology, great integrator, and great people. That's what really makes this happen. So a quick peek at the milestones here. So we kicked off on July 17th of 2023. You go through our SWIFT methodology. We went live Monday, really late Monday night. We're going to call that Tuesday morning. ATO was signed the week before, and then transitions in progress, right? So they're up, they're rolling. Here's the key piece, and we could spend days and days looking through what did work and what did not work, right? So what did work? So the team at Air Force that manages The e-business environment is VTEI. So VT is their CIO shop, and EI, I think just pull random letters out of a bottle or to make these up. But that's the team that does all of the management of their AFSVC instance, their e-business instance, right? They also have a shared services center that provides global 24/7 support. We work closely with them. We made friends with the SES person there because they were very instrumental when we needed help or resources. They got those to us right away. The prior pilot that Charlie was talking about, that really opened up a lot of eyes to things that they didn't think about, right? You always hear when people talk about going to the cloud, well, we don't have a cloud skill set. We don't have cloud people. That's not necessarily true, right? If I'm managing an F5 on-prem and I pop in an OCI, it's still an F5, right? If I have a Cisco box, it's still Cisco iOS, right? It's all going to be very similar, right? So that pilot really helped build confidence. That was one of the key pieces. And also, like Charlie, I also started this project at Oracle. I ended up with our same side, the same purview, but we led numerous sessions with analytics persons, networking people. And thank you, Riz, for your time and approving my time cards for many years for this, because we spent probably about 200 hours with the customer prior to even getting to the point where they're almost comfortable to start the process. What did not work, these are not meant to drag. These are just the organizational challenges that we found out as we went, right? So most of your DoD customers, they would use a VCAP that's already been built by DISA, according to Oracle, so on and so forth. This customer is not on that, so they had to procure their own circuits. That should be easy enough, right? Call up XYZ vendor, they plug it in, wave their wand twice, and they go away, right? Well, it turned out that the vendor did not know where the POPs were that they were connecting through. And the person who built the network had retired. So they spent about a month and a half digging through closets and telcos and looking through silly codes with the previous vendor, and then their vendor, which I'm not going to say because I don't have the permission to say who they are, but the vendor had been procured several times, so they also didn't have the records. So no one knew where this stuff was at. So the process, like Charlie mentioned, they awarded the contract in December of 23. It should be easy enough, right? We didn't get the circuits hot until August. Massive challenge, massive slowdown, because part of our sales methodology is we want to do this as fast as possible. In this case, we couldn't, right? There's a DoD requirement to transmit IL4 data. It has to be over a fast link, has to be encrypted. We didn't have it, couldn't start, right? And onboarding time. The Air Force Services, their shared services center does security, right? But in this case, they have one person who does security. So when we bring our team of 20 people, that is not the snap of the hat. That took about 8 weeks as well to go through clearance, to get this requested, and so on and so forth, to get credentialing going on. Legacy network equipment constraints. We talked about the WAN part, right? The transport. Another problem is, as time went on, they lost some of those skill sets internally, right? So as an example, they have a Cisco ASA that's out of date, so we went to connect it through MACsec. It didn't have the right cipher keys. And Oracle's keys were too high, and theirs wouldn't go high enough, right? So that took time working with our internal support teams at Oracle. Our sale, we have a security network engineer who helped us work through that process. That all takes time to resolve. These are things you may not think of, right? And then another unexpected surprise is that ASA, which is not going to be replaced before we're finished, has 2 gigs max throughput. So in our mind, we thought, well, that's great. We have a 10 gig pipe on both sides, so that should be fine. Then the vendor says, oh, no, this model is actually 2 gigs total for everything that's happening in the box. So this is not just one system, right? They have many, many other systems they use. That was all the bandwidth we had, was 2 gigs. So that was also a challenge we didn't expect, but we were able to mitigate by using some other tools and some workarounds, right? And this one is when we say support what we needed post-go live, that doesn't necessarily mean like Oracle support or our SAO providing like warranty support or those type of things. The customers, as the government runs very lean. I've always made the joke. You have to do more with less, but now they just have less, right? They have a skeleton crew that runs things. So they have an expectation that they have a SME, like a Cisco SME or an F5 SME or a big IP SME, whatever the case is. They're not going to have that, right? It's unlikely they're ever going to have that. They're not going to be able to staff a team of 50 people or whatever the case is, whatever makes sense, right? So in this case, the level of support needed post-go live, they cannot even realize, right? So the customer actually came back to our SAO team and asked, how do we get this support extended out? Even a bucket of emergency hours if we have a Cisco issue, or if we have an F5 issue, or if we have a transport issue, right? How do we do that? So that's one of the things that We didn't even anticipate that, right? As part of our, if I go back to the methodology, right? When we transition, we want that to go back to you. It's you as the customer, it's your system. But we can't, we have to keep them, right? They'll have issues, or they'll have an upgrade, or whatever, or CPUs come out and the cipher block disappears that they're using. They're gonna have issues to work around that again, right? So those are some things that worked and what didn't. I think overall, a resounding success, and it was key, the initial investment by Tharseo with the pilot, the many hours of support that Tharseo and what we provided together gave them the confidence to go forward with this. And I think that's about it, right? So it's been a great run. 3 years coming, about 8 months to go live, which was pretty fast, but that was enabled because of all the previous work that we had done. We as one team. Thoughts, questions? Yes, Mr. Airman.
So, I heard you say that the ATO came a week before go live.
That's right.
So what IL environment are you in?
IL4.
So before that, you know, we're not allowed to touch that data for an ATO unless it's masked. So how did you do data migration on masked data, you tested it, and then at the last second, bring over the unmasked data and test it a week before go live?
That's a great question. We got an exception from the AO to do it. So we were going to use like the data masking tool to go through EBIS. We had, I think at one point, 50 plus SRs open. That was not going to work. So we went back to the AO and said, if we're using, we already had ATC already, we had the IATT already. Can we please move the data in? We had internet access turned off. We only accessed the government network, so on and so forth. So we did get an exception from the AO to start early, with the intention that the AO, they're never going to start if you don't have access to this, which was true. It was a fair point. So they let us have access beforehand. So that's why I say one team is critical, because when we, Oracle and Tharseo asked, they said, the bus station's over there, go fly a kite, right? When the customer went and asked, and they had the CIO go and ask, and the CIO had a conversation with the AO's office, that changed the environment, right? So that goes back to building that team early. If we didn't have the CIO's buy-in, I'm not sure that would have happened, right? So that's one of those things that we learned early on. One team, everyone, right? So we did do a small pilot with them in 2022. We tried, but the cost over, so they get the limited environment and availability is with time was dedicated, and their budget just did not carry the money for that, right? We did do a small pilot, didn't go well, to be honest. They have a very heavily customized e-business environment, and the word we got back from the EBS PMs are that if you have a lot of customizations, especially custom packages, custom triggers, you're not going to have a lot of success.
So I have a follow-up question. If that's the case, you guys probably didn't use the one from the OCI marketplace, right? Because in the marketplace, there's several EBS installations, so we have brand new installation.
That's
right.
correct.
The one from the marketplace.
That's right. So we did try to go down that route of using the marketplace image, but I think it took us 50 hours. If we just did it manually, it took like 41 hours. So it just didn't help. But definitely a good tool though. We used that for the pilot. We used it for the POC that they did. We used it for the DR testing. So we definitely used that image where it made sense, but just not for the actual workload. If that makes sense. Yes, sir.
Did you use any interfaces using SaaS-based cloud?
So they don't have a SaaS cloud. Now there is the OIC product would have enabled that, but they don't have anything SaaS-based. This is actually their first ever cloud engagement for Air Force Services. This is the first time they ever went to anything that's cloud-based at all. They did do a nameless vendor pilot in 2020. It didn't pan out. That was that large investment. They didn't get anything from it. Any other thoughts or questions?
So did you you went directly to OCI for cloud environment? You didn't use a broker?
That's correct. So another great question. We did try to start with Cloud One, but Cloud One is only .NET. They don't do .NET. They don't do .edu. So that was one of that was our first. Whenever Charlie and I were still at Oracle, we did try that. We were also, even if it's a Cloud One Office, e-business suite is built for a different time and technology, right? It's built. We made a heavy Oracle investment on the software. We made a heavy hardware investment with the vendor, and we left it alone for 5 years and did a hardware refresh, right? So it's very monolithic. It would be nice and not call it legacy, but it's a bit monolithic, so it didn't play well to being move around how cloud won't do with DevOps, right? Definitely not an impossible thing, but after lots of investigation, we didn't. Yes,
What's the JWCC?
it was not. They actually awarded the tenancy in 2021 prior to JWCC being awarded. On the renewal, they do intend to renew through JWCC.
So how does that work? Because that's sort of a lot of people's question, right? People have sort of JWCC took a little bit longer to roll out.
Correct.
Then the contract award wasn't linked with immediately with the data.
Correct.
So, and it's not quite as easy as to sort of do with OCI. You can't just, even if it is the same organization, right?
Correct.
How big effort is that going to be? Have you guys looked at that?
We will cross that bridge in 3 years, sir. No, we did ask that question already, right? And maybe even Rizwan, if you wanted to chime in with this. So Rizwan is in the back, he's in the audience, he's one of the Oracle directors for all things JWCC. But generally, we've been told that the migration process for a tenancy, in the JWCC contract, it's not a technical migration. So it shouldn't require tearing down all things in one tenancy and restim them back up. It should be an administrative change on the Oracle side. Is that correct, Riz?
Yeah, Weston, Charlie, thank you all. My name is Rizwan, as mentioned, with Oracle, DoD, DHS, and Cloud Adoption. And so basically, the JWCC contract, once it's awarded, if you have an existing tenancy, it becomes a child of the JWCC parent.
Yeah.
So we've had multiple mission owners go through the process, and it's like you can do it over Zoom, and you can get that adoption to occur. So you don't have to migrate it from an existing tenancy into a new one.
Right.
It's an administrative switch.
Not a technical.
Yeah, but you have to go through the JWCC process,
Correct.
the RFQ.
The DAPS process, yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you change in the stack? You know, when they went from call it what they had before, because maybe certain things stayed, but what should be changed as you migrated on-prem to cloud?
That's a great question. So the biggest change for this customer was a Spark workload, right? So the cloud is mainly going to be x86. So that was a very large change because they had actually used in Solaris some of the custom Spark libraries to build extensions on the business suite. So there was some rewrite effort to fix those retrofits for the wrong word or migrate it to the x86 platform. That took some time. But this goes back to them having a great team. They didn't need our help for that. They were able to go through in the tenancy, spin up a Linux box, start migrating those packages and retooling those for x86. They actually didn't need Oracle or RCS for that. They have a strong development team. So that kind of goes back to that one team approach. And we help them here and there with issues, of course, but they're able to do most of the migration learning. We mainly handle the database conversion. And that's what we did with a combination of export, import, and transport of tables.
How big is the database?
4 terabytes. So not too big, but for an EBIS, 4 terabytes is substantial. They went live in 2005 with EBIS, so they've been live for a while. No data archiving, no compression. That would cost money. Right?
Yeah.
They didn't do any of that. Yes, sir. Yes.
How did you approach your infrastructure support? So I imagine it wasn't a model that you were in before, then it went to the cloud. Now it's all of a sudden something you have to worry about.
You have to own your infrastructure now.
Correct.
How did the customer handle that?
So they previously were the owners of their on-prem infrastructure, right? So they did have some Linux. They had a lot of Solaris. They had the Solaris route I just was that drove around Bentley in San Antonio, right? They had tons of Solaris and Spark, but they already had a team that does that. They do HIPS, HBSS. Where they're NAF, they don't get to use all the other services available to the fourth estate or whatever, right? So they already had firewall guys. They had routing people. Now I'm going to say this in a nice way. The skill set is a little bit different going to the cloud. They were very used to working in their internal network, not going outside of that network. So that's where our sales stepped in to help with that process. But most part, they had their own teams. The only person that they retooled their apps DBAs into being a cloud architect. That way they didn't have the knowledge to rebuild or recruit. Did that answer that?
It did, thank you.
And they have all of this at JVSA, so they have all of it on-prem, like within Air Force services.
Correct, that's right. They have their own data centers, right? And they're still going to maintain those because they have about 58 applications in the portfolio. This was the first one, and this is the biggest one. And it was an unusual approach. They said, let's do the biggest one first. I've never even heard of it. It's always to take the little Apex guy and kick it up there. So they actually did their biggest installation first, and now there'll be some more drag as they go forward. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just heard that, I think after the go live support, right, you convert one of the DBA become a cloud architect.
That's
So
right.
I'm just kind of wondering about how many DBA users we have that, because you still have to maintain the like EBS update,
That's
patching, database upgrade and all that.
Yes, that's right. So we were very clear with them, right? I think honesty is always the best policy. Somehow they had gotten a message somewhere when we first started that if I go to the cloud, snap, 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 come back in an hour, everything's patched, go have lunch. And that's not the case, especially for eBusiness Suite, right? In eBusiness alone, you have Java, WebLogic, Apache, forms and reports. You have a lot of tech drags still there that makes eBusiness work. So we told them the cloud will definitely speed that up. You can do a public script with a YAML file, you can automate some of that, which we help them do that. But it's definitely not going to be automatic. Now there is an Oracle product called EBS Cloud Manager that will help with some of that, but that's not FedRAMP. They can't use that. It's not in there. So as time goes on, that cloud architect who's actually an apps DBA will have a hybrid role to help transition to that.
So are you, you have to be audited?
Who's that?
Does the services get audited?
Yes.
Right. So how do they approach their separation of duties? With the new architects and everybody having to be, you can't be in one instance versus another.
No, good question. So we use the CIS landing zone. So Oracle has a CIS landing zone that adheres to CIS landing zone best practices. At the time that we started this process, that was all Oracle product manager had built. There is now an SCCA landing zone that establishes users, roles, groups. The only thing that does not, I'm going to say, that requires some extra lift is defining who those people are and then putting them in the correct roles. In this case, they have some people who do multiple things, right? But their network guy is also the OS admin, right? So in theory, in SOD, they should be doing both. But in this case, they have to. So we did have to make some modifications to the CIS landing zones. And they run the compliance script to check. They do have some findings, but they approve those with POAM that one day they're going to hire a role or transition roles or those type of things. So they do have to do the auditing process, and they did that in February. There's a couple findings, but they were able to remediate those. Nothing too big. That makes sense. As far as other auditing, though, I will say this: their CSSP is 60th Air Force, so they still use their EMAS, they still use their Tenable Nessus, ACAS, they still use all those things from the provided by 60th Air Force. Anything else? Charlie, you're coming. You're motivated to 10 minutes early. If you do have any other questions, always feel free to reach out. I do have our COIT link at the back of this deck. You can go to our website. Our marketing manager does a great job of running that. Everyone's contact information is there. There's some webinars there, some collateral. Or just give us a call, right? Or an email, drop us a line. We're always willing to help. We have a very collaborative spirit with Oracle, so if you have questions, we can connect with them. We can work to answer those, whatever the case is. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.